Russian President Vladimir Putin launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine in the early hours of February 24th, sparking the biggest war on a European state since World War II. In the month since the invasion began, it's been exactly 29 days. More than 10 million people have been displaced. Several Ukrainian towns and cities have been besieged and bombarded beyond recognition. Hundreds of civilians tragically have been killed. Now Ukraine braces for a second month of more of this, of bombing, of destruction and of death.
I decided to conduct a special military operation. It aims to protect people who have been bullied and subjected to genocide by Kiev regime for 8 years.
It all started with an early morning broadcast that stunned the world. The future of millions of Ukrainians changed with the blink of an eye. Now, a month and counting, Ukraine has survived ruthless bombing, brutal attacks, and endless hellscape. Russian forces are struggling to capture key Ukrainian cities, including Kyiv and Kharkiv. Kyiv still stands firm. Heavily outnumbered and outmuscled, yet Ukraine is giving them a bloody nose.
I thank everyone who acts in support of Ukraine, in support of freedom, but the war continues. The acts of terror against peaceful people go on. 1 month already. That's long. It breaks my heart, hearts of all Ukrainians and every free person on the planet.
The war has spared no one. Toddlers, kids, youngsters, elderly, all victims. Since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, over 10 million people have fled their homes, mostly women and children. With each passing hour, Ukraine war is fast becoming the fastest growing humanitarian crisis Europe has seen since the Second World War. Diplomatic efforts are on to secure a ceasefire, and yet reports of civilian deaths in Ukrainian cities continue to make headlines. Once a bustling, lively and colorful country, many Ukrainian cities are becoming ghost towns. Bureau Report, India Today.
US President Joe Biden is on a 4-day trip to Europe amid no end to Russian hostilities in Ukraine. Biden will be traveling from Brussels to Warsaw during his visit. Biden is in Europe to reaffirm Western alliances amid Russian aggression. The US president is going to be attending a slew of summits, NATO summit, G7 and a European Union summit on his agenda. He's also expected to impose new sanctions against Russia during his visit. Russia's action in Ukraine has isolated Russia further and returned the world to the times of the Cold War. The war has also put Russia in direct confrontation with the United States. Putin had warned the West not to interfere with the invasion or they would face grave consequences. On his part, the US president has called Putin a war criminal and has alleged that the Russian president is considering using bio and chemical weapons as well in Ukraine, a charge that's been completely rubbished by Russia.
The military tents that you see behind me are the new American camps that have come up. We are about 300 kilometers from Poland's capital, Warsaw. We are currently in a place called Mokre Jamosh. This is an airfield. And if you notice in this airfield, there are a number of tents that have come up. These tents are the new American airbase that's been set up in Poland. Now, there are a large number of American troops who are now deployed in this area. Now, if you look just behind me there, that entire green cover are American military tents. They have American military hardware from armored personnel carriers to Humvees to certain radars that have been set up, to troop carriers that have come up in this area. And they've come up from mid-March to now, and the numbers are increasing. This is an airfield. That's the airfield. This is the Mokre Jamosh airfield. This is barely 50 kilometers from Ukraine's border. And civilian movement in this area is now restricted. This entire area is not only barricaded, but you have American troops deployed at every entrance to this airfield. Now, are these American troops here as part of a North Atlantic Treaty Organization country NATO military exercise? They started coming here. The initial troops or the pioneers came in between mid to end February, and the larger number of troops are still coming in. We spoke to some of these soldiers, but they said they're not cleared to speak to media about the nature of the deployment or the duration of the deployment in Poland, close to the border with Ukraine. But there are radars that are here, there are Humvees that are here, and there are certain other military hardware that is coming in to this area, is what locals tell India today. US President Joe Biden is also to fly in to Warsaw for talks with Poland. Now, while that is a lot to do also with humanitarian assistance that will be provided to Poland for Poland looking after more than 2 million refugees who've come in from Ukraine. But Poland is also looking for additional military hardware, from surface to air missiles to fighter jets from the United States, and more troops on ground. America did commit to about 3,000 additional troops being sent here. 7,000 American troops as part of rotation are in the NATO territory right now. But Poland wants more to strengthen its security, especially with Russian missiles falling very close to Poland's border with Ukraine. With cameraman Lalit Joshi in Poland, Gaurav Sawant for India Today.
As Russia's invasion of Ukraine enters a month, the war has triggered fears of now a global conflict. NATO at this point is playing clearly a silent spectator. It's even rejected the no-fly zone demand that Ukraine has been putting forth time and again. US, Europe are right now just imposing sanctions. So in our next report, we tell you exactly what, and we decode for you the ghost of another world war.
The war in Ukraine is now a month old and counting. But not for a moment has this been just Ukraine's fight. From the very beginning of the invasion, it has had all the tremors of the global conflict. Those leading the crisis themselves warn that World War III could be ahead.
Всем понятно, что Третья мировая может быть только ядерной. Но обращаю ваше внимание, что это в голове западных политиков постоянно вертится ядерная война, а не в голове россиян. Поэтому я вас уверяю, что мы не позволим каким-то провокациям заставить нас выйти из равновесия, но если против нас начнут развязывать реальную войну, ну, это, наверное, должны думать об этом те, кто такие планы вынашивает, а они...
Amidst Ukraine's sustained pleas for NATO to impose a no-fly zone over the invaded nation, Russia raised the specter again, warning that any such move could trigger a third world war. And that's probably the reason why, despite vehemently condemning Russia, the US or the European Union have rejected Zelensky's demand to declare Ukraine's airspace a no-fly zone.
Хочемо запровадити закриття неба, тому що конкретно вбивають наших людей. Це відбувається, причому з території Білорусі і з території Росії вилітають ці ракети, бомби, ескандери, літаки, бомбардировщики.
Но любое движение в этом направлении будет нами рассматриваться как участие в вооруженном конфликте той страны, с территории которой будут создаваться угрозы для наших военнослужащих. Мы в эту же секунду будем рассматривать их как участниками военного конфликта. И уже все равно, какими там членами они являются.
Wars were fought in Iraq, Syria. And also between two of the biggest nations, China and India. But never before did the risk of World War III looked as serious as it does now amid Russia's invasion of Ukraine. On a military scale, Russia's Ukraine war is limited. Yet the risk of World War III is bigger than ever and could just be a trigger away. Till now, Europe or America have refrained from sending troops to fight against Russia, limiting their response to sanctions and military aid. So why is the ghost of another world war so strong? World War is the name given to two multilateral wars that were essentially European. The First World War, fought during 1914 to 19, mainly involved Germany, Austria-Hungary and Turkey against the Allies, France, the UK, Soviet Russia, Italy, Japan, and from 1917, the United States. The Second World War, fought between 1939 to 1945, mainly involved Germany, Italy and Japan against France, UK, US and Soviet Russia. As the stakes pile up, as the pressure builds, and as the implications mount for Europe, the Russia-Ukraine war has the potential for a bigger war, both in weaponry and geography. Will NATO be pushed to impose a no-fly zone? And is that the one move separating the world from World War III? Bureau Report, India Today.